Hi, welcome back to my channel. So now I wanted to address one specific health condition. So this is the first time I was diagnosed with anything. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome. And I believe that if there is one health condition that is heavily modulated by environmental factors and lifestyle, it would be polycystic ovary syndrome. So there's a lot of information that I want to share because I was diagnosed almost 5 years ago, and I've learned so much by reading a lot of scientific articles, but also by just through experience and by learning to listening to my body. So I think I'm going to create different videos. So I'm going to create one video where I will try to address explaining what PCOS is, just as it is described in the medical field, without any personal interpretation or anything like that. Just trying to give you a brief summary of that. Then I'd like to probably post a video that will explain what I've been through, my journey, because I remember when I started having symptoms and everything just starting going wrong, I was feeling very, very lonely and very sad, and knowing that some people go through the same thing as you, and kind of being able to relate, and especially seeing people that were able to find ways to make it better, it really, really helped me. So I think it's important for me to share that as well. Then I will share with you guys my own view to this day of what PCOS is, and how that allows me to really target it or really treat it or address it, I should say. And then in the last video, I'm going to go into more detail based on this view that I have of PCOS, of the different things that I've discovered or done over the years that have helped. So without further ado, I'm going to start with a video just briefly. I'll try to be brief, but explaining what PCOS is in terms of what's known in the medical field. So PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, is a syndrome. So what is a syndrome? A syndrome is a group of signs and symptoms that occur together and characterize a particular abnormality or condition. So it's basically a bunch of symptoms that tend to occur together. Okay. Now, polycystic ovary syndrome is quite common, and it seems as if it's increasing a little bit. The prevalence of PCOS is between 6 and 10%, approximately. Now, how is PCOS diagnosed? PCOS is diagnosed based on certain criteria, and the criteria kind of morphed over the years. So what happened is, at one point, some doctors kind of noticed that some women had specific features. So they had excess androgens, they were having physical signs of excess androgens, like extra hair growth, acne, stuff like that, and it often came with absent or irregular periods, and they kind of noticed that was kind of occurring together. In 1990, the National Institute of Health kind of created more specific criteria to diagnose PCOS. So according to that criteria from 1990, to be diagnosed with PCOS, you had to meet two criteria. You had to have clinical and or biochemical signs of hyperandrogenism. So what that means, clinical means that you can physically see there's signs of excess male hormones like acne, facial hair, or hair that is growing in places where it doesn't normally grow for female, or biochemical means in the blood. So if there's some signs that the male hormones are elevated, that's criteria number 1. Criteria number 2 would be oligomenorrhea or amenorrhea, or an ovulation. So basically your menstrual cycle just isn't happening the way it should be, whether you're getting very infrequent period, whether you're not getting your period, or whether you might getting bleeding but not necessarily ovulation. So as soon as your period is off or your cycle is off and you have signs of excess male hormones, then they would say, yep, that meets the PCOS diagnosis. Now, a little bit later in 2003, there was the Rotterdam criteria, so they changed it a little bit. It was quite similar, so they still have the criteria of hyperandrogenism and oligomenorrhea or amenorrhea or anovulation, but they added the presence of cysts on the ovaries, and they basically said that to meet the criteria for PCOS, you needed 2 out of those 3 criteria. And then a little bit later in 2006, there was another group who said, you know what, we're going to change it back, because they found that it didn't really necessarily make sense that you could be diagnosed with PCOS but not have excess male hormones, because that's really a distinctive feature of PCOS. So they basically said, well, okay, someone is going to have PCOS if they have signs of increased male hormones, whether it be in the blood or some physical signs. And then number 2, there had to be some type of ovarian dysfunction, whether your period is absent or very irregular, or you're not ovulating, or you have cysts on your ovaries. It all kind of fit in this second criteria. So this is the most recent criteria for PCOS. Now, a lot of people find that PCOS isn't the best term to describe polycystic ovary syndrome, because you can actually have PCOS but have no cysts on your ovaries, right? If your period is abnormal and you have signs of hyperandrogenism, you might not necessarily have cysts on your ovaries, but you still fit the polycystic ovary syndrome diagnosis, and some people actually want to change the name because it's kind of misleading. So that was a lot of blah, 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 but basically you get an idea of what the criteria are. Now, what causes PCOS? The truth is that it seems to be very complex, and it's not quite clear and quite known to this day. We do know that PCOS is associated with certain factors. So, for example, if you have excess insulin, you're more likely to have PCOS. If you have low-grade inflammation, you're more likely to have PCOS. If in your family other women have PCOS, you are more likely to have it. And also, if you are obese, you are more likely to have PCOS. So the exact cause, it's really not clear, but we know there's some factors that seem to increase the likelihood. Now, PCOS is associated with a bunch of other health conditions. So unfortunately, a lot of women with PCOS suffer from infertility, but it's not the case for everyone. If you have PCOS, you are more at risk if you become pregnant of having gestational diabetes or pregnancy-induced high blood pressure. You are more at risk for miscarriage and premature birth. You are more at risk for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Don't quote me on that term, which is basically severe liver inflammation that would be caused by fat that accumulates on your liver. You are more at risk of metabolic syndrome. What is metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome is, when you think of old people, all the problems they have heart problems, cholesterol, diabetes, what else? High blood pressure, all of those things. So you're more at risk of having that and having it at a younger age. You're more at risk of type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes, sleep apnea, mood disorders like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, abnormal bleeding, uterine bleeding, and then you are more at risk of endometrial cancer. So it comes with a lot of things that aren't super nice. So if you can find ways to improve your PCOS and reduce the risk of that, of course, that would be nice, right? Now, what are the treatments? Because the cause of PCOS is so unclear, and it seems to be complex, and it might even vary from one woman to the other. It's very hard to treat the cause, so usually it will be more an approach of treating the symptoms. So there's different things that can be done to try to address the symptoms. So one that your doctor might have offered if you have PCOS is the pill, because basically when you take the pill, you're taking hormones that are masking your own wonky hormones, and so that will definitely help with some symptoms like the acne. It might help with the hair. It will definitely help you have a regular cycle, even though you're not ovulating, but at least it allows the uterine lining to shed, and it reduces your risk of uterine or endometrial cancer. And then there's other things that can be done. So there's also things like spironolactone, which is a drug that helps address the excess male hormones, and it can help with acne, it can help with excess hair growth. Then there's other things that can be done. For example, there's metformin. Metformin is a drug that is usually prescribed more for people who have diabetes, blood sugar problems and stuff like that. And I think that it was kind of discovered a little bit by mistake that metformin actually helps with PCOS, because unfortunately a lot of women with PCOS end up having problems with their blood sugar, prediabetes, diabetes, and so the doctor would just treat the diabetes with the metformin, but when they did, a lot of them realized it was actually helping with some of the PCOS symptoms. So metformin has become one of the treatments that is used for women who have PCOS, and it's especially useful when you want to conceive. It can help make your ovulation a little bit more regular and all of that. There's also clomiphene and aromatase inhibitors that can be helped to increase fertility, but they can lead to multiple pregnancies because they're kind of pushing your body to ovulate. And then that's about it. There might be some other ones, but those are the main ones in terms of treatments. So that's about it when it comes to what is known in the medical field. If ever I said something that wasn't totally exact, please let me know. I would like to know, and I will see you in the next video.